Welcome to this video where we're going to talk about putting together your equipment budget using LMN. The purpose of the equipment budget is to make sure you're recovering a fair cost for your equipment. All too often, companies kind of forget about equipment and hope it's built into their pricing somewhere. Those same companies tend to often run their equipment into the ground because they really can't afford to replace it. And you start putting money into repairs, etc. And before you know it, you've spent so much money on repairs you don't want to replace it. And your equipment gets older and your labor productivity gets worse. And as it ages and ages, you wonder how you're ever going to afford to replace it. This sort of cycle happens because of the following. Many companies see the right way to earn profit as to get rid of all their equipment payments. It sounds right in theory. Great, I've got no equipment payments. That money can go right into my pocket. And that's where I'm making some big profit. But is it really profit? All you're really doing is getting rid of your payments and then putting the money in your pocket as if it was profit, when you really should be putting it in a bank account, or at least some of it, to save for the replacement value of your equipment. Your equipment's not going to last forever. You're going to have to replace it one day. But when you don't have payments and it's seen as profit, it's all too easy to forget to save for the replacement value of equipment. Because when your equipment doesn't have payments, it's seen as free. And when you've depreciated already and you don't have equipment payments coming out of the bank account, it doesn't show up in accounting. And when it doesn't show up in accounting, companies start forgetting to charge for it. And it's built in nowhere in their estimates except for some vague hope that it's built in. What ends up happening to a lot of those contractors is that the equipment gets old and gets worse and worse performing. And the more the equipment breaks down, the worse our labor productivity gets. So now our labor ratio gets high. We're spending all kinds of money on repairs. The equipment is getting older and older. The laborers work in circles around the equipment. Every time they go to use something, it's broken. Jobs take longer because of this, which means I can complete less jobs in a year, which means I have less profit at the end of the year, which means it's tough to replace your equipment. We don't want to be caught in this cycle anymore, and that's the goal of the equipment budget in LMN. What we really want to do is make sure you've got an equipment budget that will A, recover all your true costs of equipment. Every year, your equipment depreciates by a value, and it may or may not match your accountant's value. Your accountant's going to play with depreciation for tax purposes, help you pay the least amount of tax, but it's not always exactly what your equipment depreciated. Using LMN, we're going to come up with a fair depreciation schedule based on however you want to buy equipment. We'll go through those examples in a minute. And make sure that year after year, your estimates are recovering the true cost of your equipment and that you're not giving it away for free to your clients. We'll also want to make sure that your equipment rates are recovering your extra costs. So things like fuel and repair and insurance, not just the value of the equipment. Your equipment budget will also help you make better decisions when it comes to equipment. It's easy to be scared of equipment payments, but when you really stack up the cost of equipment, even leased equipment, the value that it can save off labor hours, or the faster it makes your labor, the more jobs they can complete in a month, it very quickly evens itself out. But it's hard to know this unless you can actually look at the numbers and decide what makes sense and what doesn't. And your equipment budget will help you do that. Just a couple of points to remember when you're building your equipment budget. Number one, you're only going to want to include the equipment that you're going to want to estimate. So for instance, I'm not going to build costs of shovels into my estimates. That's way too small. It'll take my estimators all day to build an estimate. But I would want to build in things like skid steer or mini X or a crew truck and a trailer. We'll show you how to do those examples in just a few minutes. The other thing you're going to want to build into your equipment budget is change. Remember again, you're working off a forecast. Last year, you might have had some equipment, but if you're looking at expanding your crews this year, you're going to need more equipment. Fuel prices might be going up or down. It's hard to predict, but you may want to bank on a small increase in fuel. If your equipment's getting older, your repair costs are probably going to go up. If you're replacing a lot of old equipment with new equipment, your repair costs may come down. Don't forget to build these into your equipment forecasts. Let's take a look now at what the equipment budget looks like in LMN and walk through how to build it. First, on the left-hand side, you're going to want to click the Equipment tab. Mine right now shows 0 as I've got nothing in there. I'm going to start here with Forecast Fuel. This should be fairly simple. Look at your P&L for last year and look at what you spent on fuel. Then make some adjustments for this year. For instance, if you think you're adding more equipment, you're going to burn more fuel, or doing more work, you're probably going to burn more fuel. If fuel prices you think are going to go up by 5%, well, then you better increase what you spent on fuel last year by 5%. Remember again, it's a forecast. Next, you're going to want to forecast your repairs. And I'll do the same thing I did when I looked at fuel. I'm going to look at last year's to get a baseline of where I was at, and then make any adjustments for this year based on whether my equipment's getting newer or older. You're not going to be able to predict that your transmission's going to blow, but you can certainly try to use last year's numbers or the year before's numbers to get a good forecast. Just remember to also look for things that might have been exceptional last year. For instance, if last year you did replace a transmission, and hopefully you won't have to this year, it may be that your repair costs will come down significantly. So look for big repairs that may have caused a spike in one year, and don't necessarily forecast those for the next year. The last category here is insurance and miscellaneous. Now, when we're talking about insurance, all I'm really dealing with here is vehicle and equipment insurance. So what my liability policy is just for my vehicles and equipment, not my commercial liability. If you can't get that number because all your insurance is bundled together, then leave this at 0 and we'll handle it in overhead. If you do know that number, then you can do it here. Many companies can even take a good guess at it. The average pickup truck costs somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a year to insure, depending on where you're at in the country. Obviously, insurance rates vary wildly by state. In New York, you might think I'm crazy for only saying $1,000 a year, whereas in a more rural area, they may think it's crazy to hear insurance rates of $2,000 or $2,500 a year in areas like New York. Next thing I need to do here is start building in my equipment that I own. So here's your equipment type grid down here. And you're going to want to use the new button to add your pieces of equipment. I'll start by adding one pickup truck to get us started, and then look at some other ways to enter equipment here. First, you're going to click the new button. I'm going to add in here crew truck, 3/4 ton. I like to keep my equipment generic. I don't break it down right by specific year and model because A, I'm not going to estimate by year and model, and B, when I keep them grouped as types, I can just increase the quantity. So if I have 7 pickup trucks that are 3/4 tons, I don't need to enter 7 times. I can just set this to 7 and have them all lumped under one pickup truck. But I'll leave it at 1 right now just to keep the example clear. Now there's a couple of different ways to budget for equipment, and that's under this class field here. There is custom, owned, financed, and group. And I'm going to have to go through each one to show you exactly how they're used. Custom means you want to set the cost per year. So for example, if you know this truck, you want to recover, say, $300 a month, and there's 12 months in a year, you can just enter your cost per year over here, $3,600, and you're done. Now, LMN users who are used to the old version of the budget, pay careful attention here. This used to be cost per month. Now it's going to be cost per year. It makes things simpler for other reasons. And don't worry, we've automatically updated all your data to reflect the new cost per year, not cost per month. But going forward, make sure you treat this as cost per year. Now, this works if you know what your cost per month is or cost per year is off the top of your head, and many contractors don't. So slide back over here, and instead of using custom, use one of the other things. Owned is probably the most common one that gets used. When I click owned, a calculator appears for me, and this will help me work out what I actually need to budget for my truck. Starting here, it asks for the replacement value of the equipment. This is up to you. What do you spend on replacing your crew trucks? If you buy new crew trucks, then I might want to budget for a brand new truck. If I replace my trucks with used trucks, then I may only want to budget for the cost of used trucks. It's completely up to you, but just make sure this field here is the replacement value of your equipment. It's not what it's worth today. It's what you would spend to go out and replace it. I'll put in a new one just for an example. Now, if you want to build in extra purchase fees, taxes, or admin costs here, go ahead and put a number here, or perhaps they're already built into your purchase cost. Next is the total years you expect to own or use the equipment. Remember again, don't think of your current equipment and how many years it has left. Think like this. If you were to buy a new truck tomorrow and you were going to spend $40,000 on it, Approximately how long would you keep it on average? Obviously, you don't know exactly, but do you keep your trucks 4 years, 7 years, 10 years? What are your habits? That's what you want to budget for. So for example, if I kept my trucks on average for 7 years, that's what I'm going to budget for. Now I got to enter the estimated value at the end of its useful life. So what is this truck worth at the end of 7 years? And maybe by 7 years in a landscape company, it's only worth about $4,500. So that's what I'll type in there. You can use websites to calculate the cost or value of your used equipment. Now down here, we're going to say enter the number of months per year you use it. So this is a crew truck. I'll leave it at 12 months a year. If this is a divisional budget, enter the number of months this equipment works in this division. Pay careful attention to this one, but only if you're building a budget for a specific division. In this example today, I'm building a company budget, so I can leave these at 12 and 12. If I was building, for example, a lawn maintenance budget where we only worked 7 months a year in lawn maintenance, and then this truck went and plowed snow in the winter, I might enter it something like this. 7 out of 12 months in this division. What that'll do is take 7/12 of the cost of the truck and build it into this division. In my snow division budget, which I'd have to build as well, this would be set to 5/12, which is the remaining number of. That way, each division would share the costs of the truck proportionate to how much of the year they use it. But in this example, I'm just doing a company budget, and if you're doing an annual company budget, these can be left at 12 and 12. The last field here is your inflation or interest rate. I like to build in a 1% inflation rate to the cost of my equipment because I know 7 years from now, the truck that's $40,000 today is probably going to be more expensive. So I'll build in some interest or some inflation, and it'll build in the cost of that. So 7 years from now, I won't just have $40,000, I'll have about $43,000 saved up for the new truck. Then it calculates for you a monthly ROI, which is return on investment, and an annual ROI. This is how much per month and per year your trucks are depreciating, each truck, so that you've got to recover these costs in your estimates so that year after year, you're simply building up more and more money, and then after 7 years, you'll have enough to replace the trucks that you currently own. So if you're happy with the way you've entered it, hit done. Now you can see here I've got a cost per year of $5,500 per truck, which is the depreciation that each truck is incurring. If I had 5 of these trucks, all I need to do now is hit 5 under the quantity, and the total will be 5 times $5,500. Now only do this if the trucks are roughly the same. If I've got 3/4 ton and 5-ton trucks, I'm not going to group those together because they have very different costs. But if I've got 5 3/4 ton trucks and they're a Dodge and it's a Chev and it's a Ford, all of them are sort of around the same replacement value. I can group these ones together and just do it like this. Makes it a lot faster for budgeting groups of equipment like trucks. I'll set this to 4 for the budget and pretend I've got all my crew trucks budgeted for. I'll hit save, and now let's look at another example of how to do equipment. This time I'm going to hit new, and I'm going to put in a skid steer. I'll leave it at 1, but this time I'm going to pick the class as financed. So in this example, I'm going to say we're financing this piece of equipment. So again, the calculator comes up. This time it asks me what's my monthly payment. Let's say I'm paying $650 a month lease on this skid steer. Then it's asking me a couple other questions. How many payments I make? How many months per year do I use it? If this is a divisional budget, enter the number of months it works in this division. Same thing as last time. If you're building an annual company budget, you can leave all these at 12. But if you're building a division budget, and maybe the skid steer works for 8 out of 12 months in construction and 4 out of 12 months in snow, I'm going to adjust these here. I would say that it works 12 months a year, and it works 8 months a year if this was the construction budget, or if I was building my snow budget, it would say 4 months a year. There's also a scenario where you might only be using this skid steer in snow, and then it sits idle all summer. In that sense, I might want to say it only works 4 months a year, and it's a divisional budget, as if I was building a snow budget. So I'll keep that as 4 as well. That way, snow will absorb all the costs of the skid steer instead of sharing it with another division. But again, if you're building a company budget, these can stay at 12. It's going to take your payments, multiply it by 12 months, and you're done. So that's how to do a finance skid steer, or any piece of equipment that's financed. Then there's also another option. I'm going to hit new, and this time I'm going to budget for my crew trailers. I'm going to start by calling this equipment trailer construction. So I'll probably have a separate item for a maintenance trailer as well. This time, instead of owned and instead of finance, I'm going to pick a group. Now the group brings up what's called a group equipment calculator, and you need to start filling this out to get your cost per month that you need to recover or cost per year that you need to recover. But watch me here. Let's say I've got a construction trailer. I'm just working on the trailer right now. So the first part of the trailer is the trailer itself. So I'll say it's got one trailer and the trailer cost me $7,000 and it's worth $500 at the end of its life, but we keep it for about 10 years. Hit save to add that trailer. Now think about what goes in the trailer. Maybe we've got a plate tamper. When I'm entering these, I'm actually just entering the number per trailer. If you've got 3 construction trailers, you're going to change the 3 up here. Don't change the 3 down here for 3 plate tampers. These are the things in a single trailer. Then I can use this quantity to say how many of these trailers I own. So we'll say our plate tamper is $2,500, resale value is nothing, and we'll keep it for 5 years. Then I'm going to add some quick cut saws. And let's say we've got 2 of those on the trailer. They cost $1,000 each. They've got no resale value, and maybe they'll last me 3 years. So I'll save that. Then I've got some miscellaneous power tools. Now, you're not going to need to replace all your power tools every year, but you're going to need to replace a certain percentage of them. So let's say each year, I'm going to recover $2,500 worth of power tools. So to do that, I do quantity 1, purchase price $2,500, year's life 1, meaning each year I'm going to have to replace another $2,500 worth of power tools. I've also got hand tools. This time I'll put in $1,000 for hand tools. And again, quantity 1, year's life 1, that'll budget for each year another $1,000 in hand tools. And maybe we've got a zip level in there as well. It cost about $800, resale value is 0, and I'll get 5 years life out of it. Hit save. What I've built here is the contents, or at least the major contents of a construction trailer. I'm not going to get down to garbage bags and string line and tiny stuff, but I've got my big equipment all built in here so that I know I'm budgeting the cost to replace all this stuff. When you're done, hit the done button. And now what you can see is the trailers cost me about $5,400 each per year in replacement costs. If I've got 2 construction trailers, like I was saying earlier, I'm just going to change that quantity to 2, and now it's got 2 construction trailers in there. You can repeat this process for maintenance trailers as well. Click Save, hit New, and this time I'm going to do Trailer Maintenance. Once again, I'm going to go to the group, and now I'm going to enter the cost of a maintenance trailer. So I'm going to go New, and the first cost again is the trailer. Maybe our maintenance trailers are $6,000 each. We'll keep it for 10 years. Now a maintenance trailer has probably got a big 0-turn mower on it. So we've got one of those, and it costs $15,000. And let's say we can sell them for $4,000. We keep them for 3 years. And maybe I've also got a walk behind. And it's worth nothing at the end, but we should get 7 years out of it. And then I've got some blowers. Hopefully I'll get 3 years out of those. I've got some trimmers. Maybe 2.5 if I'm lucky. And then any other things, like you may have a push mower as well. Don't forget, even a maintenance crew is going to have some miscellaneous hand tools. So build them in here. Let's say they're going to lose about $500 or break about $500 worth of tools a year. So once again, quantity 1, $500 a year, and 1 year life. Save it and hit done. And now you've built in the cost of a maintenance trailer, and it's about $7,000 a year. If I've got 2 trailers in maintenance with similar equipment packages, I'll click 2 and then click Save. Now I've got that built into my budget as well. Now, some of you may be operating trucks where the maintenance trailer isn't actually in a trailer, it's stored in the back of the truck. Very easy to make an adjustment for that. Back to my calculator here. If all my maintenance equipment is actually stored in the truck, it's just going to look exactly like this. You've got no trailer. So literally you could delete the trailer so that you don't need it in there. And it would just be the maintenance equipment. And in here, you'd have a cab over or whatever kind of truck that you're operating for your maintenance crews. The last thing you need to consider in your equipment budget is equipment rentals. And that number is up here. So if you rented $2,000 worth of equipment last year and you figure it about the same this year, you're going to enter $2,000. Or maybe it's more, maybe it's less. Do your adjustments. But this is where you're going to count on equipment rentals there. So just enter what you think you're going to spend on equipment rentals. When you're all set, hit the Save Changes button. And then what you can do is review your equipment ratio. Just like your labor ratio, your equipment ratio is on every dollar of sale, how much that you should be allocating to replace your equipment. My percentage is 12.4%, which means for every $100 that we're going to make in sales, $12.40 needs to be saved for equipment cost or recovered for equipment cost. When we get to estimating, I'll show you how all this kind of stuff works its way into the estimate so that everything is accurately priced. But for budgeting, now you've got a plan to make sure that this is your equipment. This is how much you're going to have to spend each year to replace it or save to replace it. And then it won't look like fake profit at the end of the year. The profit that comes out of this budget is going to be truly what your net profit is. And your equipment costs are all built into here so that you can make sure that you can replace your equipment over the life cycle that you choose. And whether you buy new and keep for 4 years and keep rolling over, or whether you buy used and keep for 15 years before you roll over, it's completely up to you. You set the equipment budget up the way you see fit. Because equipment costs aren't just like pulling them off the P&L, the equipment budget's often the trickiest budget contractors run into. But again, don't worry, we're here to help. If you have any questions when you're putting together your equipment budget, make sure you reach out to us at support@golmn.com or via our live chat, and we'll try to get you the answers to help you best put together an equipment budget that suits your company.